Steph Therapy 911 and the Roll Call Room podcast present Steph and Nick's Straight Talk, Stop the Stigma. Join us every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live. It's real, it's raw, it's uncensored. And now, here are your hosts, Steph and Nick.
Welcome, everybody, to Straight Talk, Stop the Stigma with Steph and Nick. I want to give a shout out. My co-host is doing some self-care. Very proud of him for practicing what he preaches. So it's going to be me tonight. And as I did last show, and Dr. Lew has asked, what's the deal with the pink headsets? He knows me. Pink would not be the color headsets he would have ever put me in. So again, I think it's important that everybody knows about the Wizard of Oz. So my first patient was a 64-year-old man that was mandated today. He was one of the nastiest men I had ever met. And after some time together, I realized that when you pull the curtain, it's just a gentle old man. Hence, the wizard was born. And then I realized at the end of the day, there's only one thing a cop wants to do. Go home, Dorothy. Most loyal canine, Toto, never left your side. And the cops don't know if they have the heart, the brain, or the courage to do what's going to be asked of them. Hence the Wizard of Oz. And my job is to watch over them. Hence Glinda. So anyway, that's the pink, trying to get some pink shirts too. Pink's normally not in the wardrobe, so I got the pink headsets. But I want to tell everybody that's watching and that's going to be watching kind of what an honor this is. And Lew and I have an incredible relationship. Oh, before I get started, my bucket today, Dr. Schlosser has picked Blue Health so that the bucket will be donating money to Blue Health, an amazing organization. So in my line of work, you end up working with people that do fitness for duties, and you listen to cops all day long that fear this. And today was probably the most important of the shows that we've done, and truly, I think for everybody listening, because of the fears that go along with the fitnesses. And over my 30 years, I've had truly the honor of working with different people that do the fitness for duties, but the relationship that gets established is kind of unique as a treating therapist and somebody who does the fitness for duties. So Dr. Lew and I have been doing this for quite some time together, and before him, the other individuals who work at IFP, the Institute for Forensic Psychology. So I want to give you, and I have to read because I'm over 50, so I can't see shit. So I'm going to...
What a fucking surprise.
Oh, great. So I said I'd cover his bucket, so I have no doubt he's going to try and fucking bankrupt me.
By the way.
And somebody better be counting our fucks. Yeah.
Hope someone counts. We'll match it, and my company will donate the same to Blue Health.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, although he teases me how I say his name, but I am convinced it is Dr. Lew Schlosser, is a managing partner at the Institute of Forensic Psychology, which those in New Jersey know as IFP, or that place up in Oakland, which is a police and public safety focused specialty practice. Dr. Schlosser is a licensed psychologist in New York and New Jersey. He is board certified in police and public safety psychology and counseling psychology by the American Board of Professional Psychology. He is a former tenured associate professor at Seton Hall University and former in-house director of psychological services for the New York City Corrections Department. Dr. Schlosser has conducted over 10,000 law enforcement psychological evaluations, including pre-employment, promotional, and fitness for duty evaluations. He provides training to police personnel on a variety of topics related to officer mental health, with special expertise in officer wellness and fitness for duty. Dr. Schlosser is a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Police Psychological Services section. He currently serves on the executive board of the Police Psychological Services section as the vice chair. Dr. Schlosser is also an affiliate member of the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police and the Bergen County Police Chiefs Association. He is a fellow of the American Psychological Association. Dr. Schlosser earned his bachelor's degree in psychology, his master's in rehabilitation counseling, and his PhD in counseling psychology, all from the University of Maryland at College Park.
Go Terps.
So,
Go Terps.
So although that sounds quite incredible, I think really what makes him incredible is what kind of human being he is. And I've had many people that have seen him, and the fear is incredible. And there's always lots of questions that center around fitness for duty. So whether it's the hiring process, I know there's so much going on with, how you handle medication, how you handle people that are in therapy. So I want to just kind of go over with you how much you're actually aware of the fear, and quite honestly, departments using the fitness for duty as a threat, therefore setting this up for an incredibly difficult meet and greet when you see the officers.
Well, first, let me just say thanks, Steph, for the warm introduction. The admiration is mutual.
Thank you.
Proud to call you a colleague and a friend. So the fear is real. And I think the fear comes in two parts. One is from an old school way of thinking by chiefs, which we are slowly changing, that the fitness for duty is a way to get rid of somebody. And I know historically that happened. That was definitely a thing where if a chief wanted to get rid of someone, or they had it out for them, they would send them to the shrink, and the shrink would kind of do a little, I dream a genie, and woof, there he went.
Yep.
For one, so that's one part of it. And like I said, that's not what the point, and we'll talk about the purpose of fitness for duty. That doesn't happen anymore. The other part, of course, is that cops are worst case scenario thinkers, right? And so when an officer comes into the office for fitness for duty, regardless of the reason they're referred, even if the department says to the officer, hey, we're just worried about you, we want to make sure you're okay and try to get you some help, they worry about that worst case scenario. And at some point today, I'll give the statistics from research we've done on fitness for duty to really, that's the facts part. So
Absolutely.
Folks can understand the reality of fitness for duty. And let me give the one big one that'll, be a big exhale. 94% of officers who come to see me, or come to our office, are returned to duty, right? Either immediately or eventually. And I know that for some people, that's not the number they would expect. So, and we'll of course delve deep into the numbers. But when I'm with an officer and I sense that that fear, that uneasiness, I mean, for one, I definitely try to disarm it at the beginning. But if I sense it's not dissipated, I'll actually go over the statistics with the officers. I'll talk with them like very in the moment about, I know that you may be concerned about this and what's going to happen, and concerned about your job, and then give them the statistics and say, hey, here's what the data say about fitness for duty, and here's the purpose of the fitness for duty. The purpose of the fitness for duty is for the department to make sure that you're okay. And if you are okay, great, go back to work. And if you're not okay, let's fix you, right? It is a very rare instance and really undesirable, and nobody wants it, which does happen once in a very blue moon, where we say that an officer is not fit and unlikely to be restored to fitness. But again, that's that worst case scenario. And that's the a lot of times, because officers think about the worst case scenario, they think that they're in that bucket, right? When they walk in the door, oh, he's going to find me unfit and unfixable, and I'm going to be unemployed, and then what? So I think the fear comes from the history of actual things that did definitely happen before I arrived. By the way, nothing I've ever done, and the fact that officers are worst case scenario thinkers. I will tell you, I have had cases since I've been at IFP, which I will not name names, obviously, where a chief has approached me about an officer that they deem to be a problem, and I'll evaluate the officer, and the end conclusion I'll arrive at is that the chief does not like the officer probably does not like the chief, but there's nothing wrong with the officer. And I usually never hear from the chief again, but that's okay. There's lots of chiefs, there's lots of departments, and my integrity is not for sale, right? So one of the things that we really strive to do is to give officers absolutely a fair shake. If you're okay, I'm going to say you're okay. And at the same time, if you're not okay, I'm going to either talk you into getting help or twist your arm into getting help, right? I'm not doing an officer a service by putting them back to work when they're in need of assistance, when they're really in need of help. I'm not doing my job then, right? So my job is to really call it like I see it. But the purpose of the fitness for duty is really to make sure officers are okay.
So I know that I've had many different experiences. One of them, as soon as the chief found out they're in counseling, they're getting help, it was an immediate fitness for duty. They were immediately begunned and were put on administrative leave until they could go up and get that fitness. And I remember that officer saying, I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to cost me my career. And, I remember saying to him, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But him having to live with that for what would be 3-4 days of trying to figure out how he was going to take care of his family was just incredible. And I will tell you the nicest part, because you don't pull any punches, is by the time he left there, you had already called his chief to tell him that he was fit. But how do you deal with departments when the fear is the counseling, when that actually should be the least of their fear? And I know for you, I know that one of the things that you have valued the most is having an officer, even a recruit that's going to go through, that you're doing the initial, that if they tell you that they're in therapy, that you still rather have somebody who is doing and practicing good self-care from the beginning than keeping that stigma. Yet, how the hell do we get the word out that is the case? Because, I know National FLP fights it. I know Blue Help's fighting it. Cops, everybody, every organization out there is screaming, looking at the suicide rates and looking at all the stressors. Let's just get them help. And the guys, men, women, are just like, if I do that, it's going to cost me everything.
And I think, there's a couple of things that in what you said, Steph. One is, of course, the act now, this shouldn't happen anymore. The act of like a chief finding out, oh, Officer Samuels is in therapy,
right,
that doesn't rise to the level of ordering a fitness for duty, right?
Correct.
So, right.
Correct.
So for people who are listening and interested, like when people wonder, so what's the level, right? What's the threshold? Threshold is driven by law, right? You're not allowed to order an employee for an intrusive medical examination without meeting a couple of criteria. One is you have to have some objective evidence that the employee may not be able to safely and effectively perform their duties. And two, you must have a reasonable belief that there's a psychological condition or impairment underlying, right? That's the criteria. The other one, of course, is if there's a danger to self or others, but that, like a direct threat. But that's easy because nobody's disputing that, right? And so the most sort of dumbed down version of that would be the officer who takes their badge and gun puts it on their chief's desk and says, I can't do this job right now, I'm stressed out. Okay, they've met both criteria. I know it's an oversimplification, right? I can't do the job and I'm stressed out, right? So you've met the criteria for ordering an officer for a fitness for duty. But just because you met the criteria doesn't always mean you even have to do it. So a lot of times when we have officers who are in need of help, sometimes the department will call and the first thing I'll say is, well, why don't you try EAP, or why don't you try, and I know EAP can suck, so why don't you try connecting them with a police therapist like you, or other, people,
right.
other people who we know who are experienced treating first responders. And say,
right. The culturally competent therapist, and that's what we addressed last week, is being able to get a list. And I know that you provide a list in our state, and that needs to be done in all 50 states.
Right.
So absolutely.
Right. Because the last thing we need, as you know, because therapists in general are a bit liberal douchey, and so the last thing we need is for an officer to find themselves, in an office of someone who's got some underlying real negative attitudes toward law enforcement and potentially impacting their work with that officer. That's the last thing we want. So if an officer finally can get past the stigma and say, I need help, we want to be like, all right, here you go. Here's someone who can help you. Here's someone who knows exactly how to help you, with what's going on. So
one of the things that came up, and this goes into the federal arena, because federal is different than municipal, is that, I met a lovely family, unfortunately under horrendous circumstances, after their son and husband had died by suicide. And the whole issue was that he really he would pay out of pocket out of this fear of the department finding out and that there would be retaliatory action. And at some point in time, and finding the right therapist, it's just, there's these layers that we have to figure out how to remove. And I remember many years ago, so I'm going back probably 25 in my career, with Irvin Geller, so the founder of IFP. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to him after one of my guys, who was a dick, by the way, when he went up there, which was pretty entertaining. Like he brought somebody with him. He would not, he was not going to meet him alone. He knew he was going to jam him up. Anyway, it was an epic shit show. And when he went back, I said, you've now done it my way. You fucked that thing up just royally. So, and by the way, it wasn't that he wasn't found fit. They just wouldn't see him, and it was just a disaster. So when he went back up, and I said, just tell him what happened. You're not fucking crazy. Like, what you went through was a legitimate issue with a stressor that anybody would have issues with. So I remember for like at least the first 5 years of my career, just feeling like you guys were the enemy. I needed to figure out how to tell my guys to talk, fuck you, do whatever they had to so that they could be fit. Even though, because I knew they were fit. So the question was, would you know they were fit? Because I would never send somebody for a fitness and want them to be fit that wasn't. So I remember when Dr. Geller called me and we were going over the case, and he said that, he was fit and blah, blah, blah. And I said you know what? You're really reasonable for somebody that's on the opposite side. And I will tell you, 25 years later, I have never forgotten his response. And he said, Stephanie, he said, we have never been on opposite sides. He said, you are an advocate for your patients, and I have all the respect in the world. He said, what you want for them is to make sure that they are healthy. He said, I'm doing the same thing up here. He said, we are on the same side. And from that day, it completely kind of reduced my stigma of sending the guys. It helped me be able to say to them, listen, here's what it is. If I'm seeing this in my practice, unless you're bullshitting me something fierce, there's no reason why they're going to see something else. And that goes, by the way, both ways, whether they are fit or whether they are not fit. Because I have people that when they go to see you truly aren't fit, and they're afraid that their bosses are using it to now get them back to work before they're ready. So it's been really interesting to understand the importance of this. And I know you and I have spoken so often about medication and the importance of being able to have officers that need medication on medication, and kind of the lay of the land with that as well, because that's the other fear. If anybody finds out I'm taking an antidepressant, my entire career is over. So
let's dispel that rumor right now. And
go ahead.
I don't have the statistics, but let me just tell you, listeners, we got plenty of first responders running around the state of New Jersey on a low dose of Lexapro or a low dose of Wellbutrin or a low dose of some SSRI antidepressant. And I'd rather you take one of those every morning than 2 or 3 shots of whiskey every night, right? And the important thing to understand is what we look at and what a physician would look at if your department has a med use policy where you have to report that you're on something, is the American College of, and it's either environmental and occupational medicine or occupational and environmental medicine. I don't remember what order of the letters, but they have published guidance on medications for law enforcement. And this guidance is basically helps us understand what medications officers can be on that will not impact their safety, like out in the field. And so the SSRI antidepressants are all safe and approved for on-duty use. An example, of course, of a medication that would be like a benzodiazepine, like a Xanax or a Valium, right? Because if you've ever had to take one, then you know how sedating it is, and you wouldn't want to be out in the field with that in your bloodstream. So, because it would compromise the officer's safety.
But isn't there a certain amount of that they can still take it, but they need X amount of hours prior to the time they're on duty? Is that accurate, or
if they're using benzos, right, it's, some will say at least 8 to 10 hours, prior to the beginning of your shift. But let's be honest, a benzodiazepine, as you know, Steph, is not a long-term solution for managing anxiety, right? It's quite frankly like taking a couple of shots of whiskey in pill form. It has pretty similar effects on the brain. And so, usually sometimes officers get placed on medication, and the officers really need to be good advocates for themselves, because you wish and think that your own doctor would know not to prescribe you something that is going to compromise your safety. But there have been times I had an officer who was on, I forget the name of it now because I'm getting too old, the medication that take you off opioids.
It's Suboxone.
Suboxone, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the doctor put him on Suboxone and didn't say anything about the fact that he shouldn't be at full duty while he's on the Suboxone. Because Suboxone is in that R category. You shouldn't, it's sedating. You shouldn't be at full duty until you're come off of it. But the doctor didn't tell the guy that. And so as soon as I found out, I was like, look, dude, you got to be off duty for a little bit until you can get off the Suboxone. It's not a punitive thing. It's a safety thing. And I would definitely want officers to understand that. It's not that we want to keep you from your job. It's that we want to keep you safe when you're at your job.
So I'm going to piggyback on the Suboxone, because this is a huge issue for me. Huge issue, both personally, professionally, and in my soul, is that the Suboxone, people wrongfully believe, is a opiate blocker. Suboxone is not only addictive itself, but is only a 50% opiate blocker. So therefore, you can still get opiates in you. So I believe, and I'm going to ask you for the accuracy, but I'm pretty sure of this. So when officers want to get off of the Suboxone and they're concerned about substance use, there's naltrexone. So naltrexone is a 100% opiate blocker, and you are fit for duty. You can take naltrexone for the rest of your life. There's all sorts of guidelines. I'm not a psychiatrist, but naltrexone is a 100% opiate blocker. And for those people that don't know what naltrexone is, everybody knows what Narcan is. So Narcan is, pop you right up. For officers that tell the story, is unpleasant because it puts you into precipitated withdrawal immediately. So naltrexone is the pill version of that. And Vivitrol is the injectable 30-day form of that. So those are all drugs. So when somebody doesn't want to come off of the Suboxone, then I have to wonder what else is going on. And the other thing that they have done the studies on naltrexone to find that it actually stops the cravings or deals with the cravings of alcohol. So it really has been a phenomenal drug.
Yeah. Well, and so part of it, Steph, is the with the suboxone I have found. Again, this is anecdotal, so I'm sure they're good addiction specialists. But there are some addiction specialists who will tell you that, oh, it's going to take months for this patient to come off suboxone. And part of that becomes because these people are paying out of pocket super exorbitant rates to the doctor, to keep coming and getting the suboxone prescription. Because let me tell you, when I told the officer, like, hey, the suboxone is going to keep you from full duty, he went to a facility, he was off it in 10 days.
Yep. It's been my
Right?
experience as well. Yes.
So it can be medically managed, it's not a 6-month or a lifetime sort of thing. I definitely think that, again, this comes back to like, you need to be a strong advocate for yourself. And listen, cops in general don't like to take pills, like as a stereotype. So
they'll take everything else, by the way. I mean, they don't give a shit about, that's what I always love. I listen to the guys, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
but I think that, if there's a medication out there that could help them, I think it's important that they just become really educated about it.
So my concern is, and we've got somebody who asked a question, is how do departments look at law enforcement taking antidepressants? So it's not just the officer, but now you've got the drug tests. Now you've got a department. Now what the hell happens?
So it's a great question. So if you're a police leader out there listening to it and you don't have a medication use policy, you should. One of the best in the business is from Ray Hayduka, who's the chief in South Brunswick Township in New Jersey. And they've got a really great system set up with the med use policy where the officer indicates if they're on something, and it goes in an envelope and it goes to the township physician so that the department doesn't actually know what they're taking. The township physician evaluates whether or not whether or not the officer needs to be off for some days or on light duty, or no, it's completely fine. So if the officer puts it there on something and it has not going to impact anything, the department won't even know because they just put it on the form and it gets sealed up and it goes to the township physician. So there are ways to, really do it right and protect the privacy of the officer, because the department has a kind of an obligation to, if an officer is taking something that has what we would call, psychotropic effects, meaning a medication that impacts mood or something, the department really does need to know. So there's a way to do it without compromising the officer's privacy, right? And having everybody know that they're on medication or something.
Right.
So, and I've got, typically when I deal with a police chief about a fitness for duty, if I have an officer who's gone on a medication and the chief will ask, oh, the so-and-so is taking such and such. And I'll say, that's no big deal. And they're like, really? And I go, yeah. So they're, but then they're content. Again, it has to be something that's well managed, though. It has to be really managed effectively by the department to protects the department, but also protects the officer's privacy. What the department needs to do is do it in the least intrusive way possible, right? Into the officer's life.
So thoughts on giving an officer medication without psychotherapy?
Stupid. Oh, wait, fucking stupid.
Of course. Of course.
Right? But Steph, you and I, so here's the thing.
Absolutely.
Steffi's an LCSW and I have a PhD, and we both have hammers that say therapy, and everything looks like a nail to us. And if you're a psychiatrist, you've got the pills, and the pills are your hammer, and everything looks like a nail to you. So, but of course, the pill, as will tell you, if something's up with you, what the pill does is it helps manage some of your symptoms of if you're depressed or if you're anxious or if you're dealing with post-traumatic stress. It doesn't make it go away. It doesn't process the trauma that you've experienced. It doesn't help you come to a better understanding about the shit that you're dealing with in your life. Therapy does. And quite frankly, I would, and I usually do, if I have an officer who comes in and need help, the first thing I'll say is, how do you feel about talking to a therapist? That's the first question.
But what's their response? What's their typical response?
It really depends on the officer and depends on why they're there. I also think, not to be arrogant, but I've also been doing this a long time. So by the time I get them to that question, I think they're pretty open to the idea. Because if I do my job well in the fitness for duty, what I have done is I've held up a mirror to the officer and I've showed them exactly who they are. It may not be, not say unkind, but it's truthful, right? I'll cut through the bullshit. I'll tell them exactly what I think is going on and what they need to do to kind of right the ship. And so by the time, you're done, close to the end of the evaluation, and I say, how do you feel about talking to someone? I think they think like, well, maybe I should. Some of them are still closed off to it, but I think a good number are pretty open to the idea. I think that's again, thankfully, a slowly changing shift in our kind of first responder culture, which is a good thing. I think in part you have the resiliency officers that we have now in New Jersey. We've had some departments. We do it for a couple, and I know that Jen Kelly, who's a colleague of mine in South Jersey, does it for a couple departments where we do the mandatory wellness checks now, where what a department will do is they'll send every single person in the department to say hello to a psychologist once a year. And all the department gets back is a letter that says, Officer Samuels came to her appointment. And what it does is it gives the officer an entree into therapy if they want, without somebody knowing, right? That's part of it. It's, again, another tactic for trying to break down the stigma.
So having mentioned what you just did, so what is your view on those that do fitness for duties also seeing patients?
Well, so all I do is assessment. So that's my own bias, right? And that's where I come from. I do the fitness for duties. I do pre-employment with the new hires. Mm-hmm. I'll do debriefings after bad things happen with officers. And I'll do a lot of trainings and consultations with police leaders. I don't do therapy.
Why not? Why?
Probably terrible at it.
Okay. But besides that, I will give you that. But
I think it takes a certain person. I think it takes a certain person to be a really gifted therapist. And I think, quite frankly, to be a gifted therapist, you can't be a gifted evaluator. I think they really pull very different things.
I think there is a huge conflict of interest. I know when I vet therapists that for national, for Copline, that the one question that is always asked is, do you participate in fitness for duties? Because how the fuck are you supposed to open up and relax knowing that this person is also potentially going to?
Right. And so you can't. So, Steph, at least for psychologists, I'm sure social work is similar. The ethical code of conduct really prohibits dual relationships. And I'll give you a great example of doing it right. So Jen works for Evesham PD down in South Jersey. Jen does their pre-employment. She also does a wellness program. And so, of course, what that means, because she performs a counseling-ish function for their officers, she told the chief, I really shouldn't see your officers in fitness for duty. And so if they have an officer in need of a fitness for duty, they come to see me. So and that's the way to do it right, because once she engages in that wellness visit, because that could go into a couple of sessions that are like therapy, right? As a therapist, don't take this the wrong way, honey, you lose that objectivity, right? You're an advocate. You want the best for your patient.
Correct.
And as the evaluator, your job is to say, okay, I have a responsibility to do what's right for the officer, but also for the department. And I have to think about the community being served. Like, it's not just the officer's welfare, right? I have to think about multiple things. But yeah, so I do fitness. If you treat someone, you shouldn't evaluate them. Absolutely. You could evaluate them when they first get hired and then maybe later see them in therapy. But once you see them in therapy, the fitness for duty is off the table.
I think those lines, I think there's enough to stay in your own lane. And that has been a huge, huge conflict. And I have watched my guys suffer horribly at the hands of that dual relationship. Just totally inappropriate. But,
yeah, people really need to understand that if they're in a treatment relationship with someone, that person can't do the evaluation. And I certainly hope that the departments would know that. But if they didn't, listen, one of the things that I do you had talked, because you had said something earlier in our conversation about, how do we get departments to know about fitness for duty? Well, I do trainings around the state on fitness for duty, on when do you order one, when do you not, and what you can expect. And this issue of, you really shouldn't have someone who's a treater do the evaluation, is also something that I cover, So I think, the education's there. I'm actually working right now on a training. I was just asked to help out with a statewide training on fitness for duty. That's part of the IA internal affairs function. And that's going to be, I think, rolled out in late August or September. So I think there's and one of the first slides made me super happy because they put it together and then asked me to help out. One of the first slides said, fitness for duties are not to take jobs. Fitness for duties are to save lives. And I was like, all right, good. So they're thinking the right way. They're seeing this the way it should be seen, which is it's a mechanism for helping officers.
I know one of the things that's come up in my practice quite a bit. Matter of fact, I gave Matt a run for his money because I said to him, "Could you tell me where Marinol fits in? Whether somebody's fit taking Marinol?" And he calls me back like a day later. He's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? It's pot." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I knew that." So now with the legalization of medical marijuana and post-traumatic stress disorder being one of the diagnoses that has been approved, I have a lot of my cops that are still active that say this would be great. However, it is my understanding that it still remains on a list that it would be a desk job. It would require light duty, which means if the officer can't perform his duties within inside of a year, they can actually then involuntarily remove him. So what's your whole take on this whole marijuana thing going on?
I don't know off the top of my head, Steph, the ACOM position on Marinol, right? Because I'm not a physician, so I just know how to read. So I don't know which category they've placed it in. So my opinion is really, if they said, for example, it's approved for on-duty use, who might argue? But I don't know
what about if an officer has a medical marijuana card?
Right. I would basically.
So now what happens?
So for me, I would want the physician to be putting something in writing that says this officer's use will not impair, will not at all impair their ability to perform the essential functions of their job, and put their fucking license on the line and put their, because I don't know. I'm going to be on, right? I'm not a physician, and I'm also not a drug expert to know if you take this, will you be safe doing your job? Because that's ultimately my concern, right? If I don't put you on the road because of some medication, it's because that ACOM guidance had said, you need to either have a temporary restriction or you need to be on the desk while you're on it. It's not independent judgment of mine, because that's outside of my wheelhouse as a psychologist.
So what happens? Because I've had several of my guys that I know commanding officers have called and basically said they don't want this person. Like, they absolutely do not want them. I mean, I know that we had one captain that delivered a box of shit to your office that was just incredible. What's the pressure that's on you at that point?
I don't really feel the pressure, because I know that they might want to bring pressure to bear to be like, look at this voluminous evidence we have, because the department has been dealing with this person for many, many years, and the department may not like this person, and this person may not like their department, right? It may be, in a perfect world, we would figure out a way to have a professional divorce and get this officer to a different department, but that unfortunately we can't do that. And I'm of the mindset, and I have been for many years, that my job is to do it right, and my job is to call it right. And if I think the guy's fit, I'm going to say they're fit, and this is the evidence why. And I think they're not fit, I'm going to say they're not fit, and this is the evidence why, and here's what we're going to try to do to fix them. And if the department doesn't want to work with me, I'm okay. I just, at the end of the day, nobody is worth my license or my ability to make a living again, or my integrity, right? And I think as an evaluator, you're only as good as your integrity and your credibility. And I always say I'm changing officers' opinions about fitness for duty one person at a time when they usually say something like,
Agreed.
Doc, that wasn't as, they go at the end, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I'm like, what did you think it was going to be? You know?
But that's part of all of that.
Right.
And a lot of times you see these guys multiple times, you know, and I kind of want you to go over that, you know, that fit for duty, the fit with health, the, you know, that really that 94% is that 6% that they're worried about, you know, not fit, not fixable.
Yeah, let's talk about that date. I wonder, do you think, no, I don't think, do you think this thing will let me share the screen? I actually have slides. Do you think it's that? I don't know, we have too many, maybe we have too many fucking things between Facebook Live and Zoom.
I have no idea. You can give it a whirl.
Nah, I don't think I'll mess with it, but.
Just hold shit up, Lew.
All on the same computer, but I'll have it, it's okay, I have it in my brain anyway. So, or actually maybe I can pull it up pretty easy on my iPad here. One of the things is going over, yeah, here we go. I do have the stats. So I want to give really precise statistics.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, that's one of the things when I decided to do this, that was really important to me, was that we had a podcast out there that truly just gave facts. Everybody's got opinions. Everybody has comments, but to really have guests on, to have people and to be able to have a positive program that gives facts and a point of contact to actually get the real information, not just continue to spread bullshit.
Right. So I'm looking at, so the research that we did, it's between, by the way, anybody who's interested, the article that describes this research is available on my website for my company, which is www.ifp-testing.com. But if you just Google IFP testing or Google my name, boom, it'll come up. Every article related to police and public safety I've written, there's a link to it there, including the particular article on fitness for duty that we wrote in I think 2016. So we looked at, it has almost 500 people in the sample. It's between 2011 and 2014. We're going to do an update of it pretty soon because it's getting a little dated now. 90% male. Average length of service was about 15 years in the police and public safety field. The average age of the subject was 40. The ethnic breakdown was predominantly white, about 60% white, 10% African American, 15% Latino, less than 1% Asian, and then about 15% didn't tell us. Again, and so in this study, we looked at only armed law enforcement, so police officer, sheriff's officer, prosecutor, investigator, state troopers. You know, because we also in our office work with firefighters and dispatchers and other first responders, but we excluded them for this analysis. And so the outcome is of this study, we had 57% were fit for duty, which is almost 60% go back to work, right? And then another 5% or 5.5% was fit for duty with some light recommendation, meaning either some, hey, you're in therapy with Stephanie, I want you to keep seeing Stephanie for a few months, or you're on a medication, I want you to see your prescriber however often the prescriber wants to see you, right? So you have about 62 or almost 63% of people that were saying, look, you're fit, go back to work. Then you have another almost 13% where we say, well, you're not fit for full duty, but you could do light duty or modified duty, and which is, if the department has that available, we always try to do that. Wherever it's possible. As you know, Freud, even though he did a lot of coke, said man's job is to love and to work, right? And so, of course, we feel good about getting up and going to work. So if there's a way we can have an officer at work while they're, for example, maybe getting treatment or something is happening, we'll do that, right? Then you have another, it's about 18.3% that we said they were not fit for duty, but can be fixed, right? So we're basically saying like, or have the possibility of being fixed, you know, they're basically saying like, hey, you need a break in service, let's get you some help, and then we'll see you on the back end, hopefully with an eye of returning you to work. most common thing would be, an officer who gets a DWI, right, before they maybe enter alcohol treatment. Although typically what happens now is the PVA will scoop them up and send them to Florida, and I'll see them on the back end, which is fine. Because if I saw them on the front end, I would say the same fucking thing. I would say, go to Florida or go to treatment somewhere, and, I'll see you when you're done.
Treatment somewhere. I got a huge case of the ass with Florida shit. But anyway, Go ahead.
Anyway, and then last is the worst case scenario. So in this study, it was 5.7%, but just right, 6%. So again, we've already gone through all the others. 6%, we say you're not fit for duty and you're unlikely to recover, which of course, every single fucking cop that walks through my door thinks that they're in that 6%, right? Because that's the worst case scenario thinking. Yep. Of that 6%, a third of those officers are officers who are involved in bad shoots or some bad incident. They're really messed up and they want out, right? And they come in and I write a report and help them get their 2/3. We help sign them out.
Yeah.
So it's really only 4%, or four out of every 100 cops, right? And this is a group of almost 500. So now you're talking about 15 or so people that were unfit and unfixable in a 3 to 4 year period, right? It's good to have that reality injected, because again, it helps and I've even had officers say, well, Doc, when you put it like that, I like my odds.
Right, of course. I'll take those odds any day.
And the truth is, those officers that are in that unfit, that 4%, are typically officers we've seen multiple times, who've had multiple chronic problems, but also had multiple courses of treatment. Because of course, the thinking about a fitness for duty is follows. And every time I teach about it, I always say this. First question is the officer fit for duty, yes or no? If the answer is yes, go back to work. If the answer is no, the very next question I ask myself is, can the officer be restored to duty in a reasonable period of time? And then, because think about it like a lawyer would. If I say you're unfit and unfixable, the lawyer's first question is, Dr. Schlosser, what attempts at fixing officer so-and-so did you make? And so the whole goal, of course, is if an officer needs help, is to get them help. So now an officer isn't fit.
Do you take his or her firearm?
Hey, I don't do it, but I will tell you that when an officer is sent for an evaluation, the standard course of action will be that an officer is disarmed and placed on administrative leave pending the evaluation. Now, there are instances where an officer being disarmed will be counter to their mental health. And I'm thinking of a case in my head, which I think was your guy, but probably. It's happened a few times where
Did we fight?
What? No, we agreed. We didn't fight. No, but I've had officers where the officer wasn't fit and they was getting treatment, but I said to the department to disarm this officer is not a danger to himself or others, and to disarm this officer after he had been involved in a shooting would be to make the officer feel naked and vulnerable, and to really be working against the officer's mental health, quite frankly. And so I think the departments usually take the weapon as a matter of course because of risk management and because of lawyers, right? And that's sort of a typical thing, that they don't want you out on the road and they don't want you using the department firearm. They don't care if you kill somebody with your own gun, but don't do it with the department's gun.
And they don't care if you kill yourself with your own gun. I mean, that's the other side of this, is that if you're going to take a firearm, then you need to look at.
Steph, the good news is, I will tell you that that's changed too. So over the years of doing this, one of the things I've because I work very closely, as you know, with the departments when there's an issue, especially when there's any concern about safety for the officer.
Absolutely.
What we'll say to the department, because departments handle things differently. Some departments say, Doc, I can't take his personal guns. And other departments say, well, we'll just scoop up all the guns. And usually what I say to them is, if you can't take his personal weapons, say to him, hey, let me just hold these in an abundance of caution while you're going through this. Like, we're concerned about you. And I typically have gotten good news on the back end that the officer has been like, okay, no,
It's that stigma. It's that de-gunning that just holds so much weight. And when you have to take a firearm, I know. I mean, people have always. I've had many questions of, have I ever, removed firearms? The answer is, I have had officers that have safeguarded their weapons with other people that I have been in contact with to make sure that those weapons have in fact been safeguarded.
I've heard that before too. I had an officer say to his department, "Hey, my dad, who was a retired from somewhere else, has the weapons. Great, and he's got them in his safe or whatever." It's not about punishing; it's about safety. But I understand the point you make about how someone feels, the emotion attached to the act of being disarmed.
But the disarmament is every cop that's going to perform the duties of a police officer must do so with a firearm. So as soon as you remove that, you have now removed his ability truly. And that hurdle, that psychological component that says, I'm never going to be able to come back. Like he's just saying it's temporary. And I know about the hypervigilance, which you're going to tell me is paranoia.
No, Steph, I'm going to tell you, it's the catastrophizing. It's the worst case scenario thinking. It's what's the evidence that you're never going to get your gun back, right? I mean, I know that's the thought that pops in the mind,
Correct.
But no. So I go back to, if someone said, well, I'm never going to get my gun back, I'll say, well, I'll call bullshit, because I'll show you the data that shows that 94% of people go back to work. So where are all these people that are not getting their guns back and not getting their jobs back? But part of it becomes a perception too. There's this perception that,
absolutely,
right? Fitness to duty is a 4-letter word. It belongs in the fuck it bucket, But I think part of what I want to do, and why, like, be coming on this with you and doing the training and trainings around the state, is to educate people about what it is and what it isn't, and then to do it right. Because of course, in my practice, there are some doctors who work for me and who I supervise and who I train, and say, basically teach them the same thing. Fitness is not a game of gotcha. You're not the Chief's hatchet man. And if you're thinking that way, you're fucking thinking about it the wrong way. And that's not what we're about. Because like Irv said to you, I would never want an officer to think for a second that I wasn't pro law enforcement. Like that would, to me, that would break my little heart if they thought I was somehow not on the same side as you.
I absolutely. And when we talk about the cultural competency of therapists, I also am incredibly fucking frustrated with psychiatrists.
Yes.
With people that and medical doctors who are medicating and then say, well, there's nothing out there that tells me what is okay and what isn't okay. That is your job. If you are seeing a certain type of patient, and if you're seeing a stroke patient, I would like to believe as a psychiatrist that you're going to make sure that there is no contraindications with any medication that they're on, and that you do your due diligence and call their medical doctor to just review the medication you put on. So I also get frustrated with seeing medications over medicating, quick flipping of meds, and just almost no accountability in that field as well. So, we all want our jobs to be as easy as possible, given an incredibly difficult job.
Yep.
And having the right tools and the right people, and getting the political bullshit out of it, where, well, this one, is friends with this one, so therefore this is where we refer to, the union supports this program. Yeah, I have always said, give me the best program and I will refer. I don't care who runs it, who owns it, who doesn't own it. That has nothing to do with it. And integrity is everything. I mean, truly, truly everything. And once we start to be bought, we're done.
Well, and for me, I have officers who, I know that you have talked to me about LEADER,
Yes.
the LEADER program up in Massachusetts. There's also Sierra Tucson out in Arizona.
Yep.
And other facilities that I can't think of off the top of my head.
We have first responders first out west that are actually getting stuff back east. phenomenal, phenomenal.
I've
Has
had a couple guys go through Warrior's Heart in
Texas. It was in Texas.
Who were military and are now first responders with great success. So yeah, I mean, I think again, the take-home message for officers is there's a lot of choices, which is good. Very specifically to try to help them. There isn't just, I mean, I had an officer who asked for help. He was going through a divorce. A very enthusiastic union rep said, "Oh, you need help? Send him to Florida."
Yep.
Florida sent him back. He came to see me, and I gave him a number of a therapist. And I said, I put him back to work, and I said, "Here's a therapist that you can talk to who understands law enforcement families, and can help you. And if you want, and if they wanted couples counseling, great. But if really he wanted to talk to someone about what was going on. Simple." So sometimes I think departments, listen, I'd rather they go too much than not enough. But sometimes it's about knowing how to offer the right kind of help. So.
And by breaking down the stigma, by really understanding what a fitness for duty is, for understanding really what therapy is, and being able to see faces, do you look like the guy that's doing a fitness for duty? Jesus, you just got off a bike. Half the time you're mopping up your goddamn forehead here.
Oh, I've been sweating like crazy. It's hot down. It's 90 degrees.
Pay the fucking air conditioning bill, Lew.
I have the air conditioning set to 7. It's just taking forever to cool down.
So,
I think one of the things that's important to know also is that I wrote an article last year about, you remember this, about how to reduce stigma. It's called "You Have to See the Psych." And the premise behind it is that, also it's available on the website. It's a nice, easy read. It was in the Chief. The premise is that the system is set up for cops to be not trustful of shrinks, right? Their first interaction with a shrink, pre-employment, I got to get past the shrink, right? They get involved in a shooting, oh, I got to get past the shrink to get back to work. They get sent for a fitness, oh, I got to get past it. They don't ever view the shrink as helping them. They always view them as helping the agency. And so offer a number of ideas for how officers can be, to reduce the stigma, how shrinks, because shrinks sometimes we fucking suck. Not us, you and me, but some of them out there are terrible. Then of course what departments can do to help break the stigma as well, so that when the officer gets sent for a fitness for duty, they don't think it's the end of the world. They think, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to this doctor, and he's either going to put me back to work or he's going to try to help me get me some help, because that's really what happens. I mean, the cases of the unfit and unfixables, they're the worst. I don't want to be involved in litigation. I don't want to be involved in a protracted, drawn out fight. If we can fix you, fuck, we're going to fix you. I think I had a guy I sent to you. I think you saw him, Steph. He was a guy who'd been involved in 3 different domestic violence situations with 3 different women. I think you recall this person. And by the 3rd time I saw him, I said, "Look, fella, I know that you think you've done nothing wrong, but you need to figure the fuck out why it is you're pissing these women off enough that they're getting either restraining orders or filing charges against you. Because you're not going to get another bite at this. The department's going to say, fuck it." And he went to counseling and I think really turned his fucking life around and turned his career around. And so.
Yeah, he hasn't seen your ass again, that I know.
Well, that's for sure.
And that was it. And matter of fact, you told him, I better not see you again. So, he talks about that.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of tough love, which you're no stranger to, and letting an officer know, sometimes I'll see them, when I see them a second time, I'll say, look, you don't get 3. I always tell officers when they're in the office, I say a couple of things. One is this: when you get hired, you have a safety net. You assume that you're going to do right and they'll do anything for you. When you fuck up, you cut that safety net a little bit, right? But you can fix it. You can retie the knots. You can kind of get it back. The other thing I tell officers all the time is this: the shit that happened to you are pages in the book of your life. And you can't rip out the fucking pages. But you can write more chapters, and whatever happened that you aren't proud of doesn't have to be the title of your fucking book. Right?
So, in wrapping up, what is it that you want to kind of close with for those that are watching now and that, hopefully they're going to view for the next week, 2 weeks or whatever?
I think one of the most important things, like we said, is if you get ordered for a fitness for duty, I want you to understand that the sky isn't falling and that the world isn't ending. That it means it's certainly if you're coming to see me, it means that the department is concerned about your welfare. That's really what it's about. And a lot of times when I talk to departments and they have a concern about an officer, I will tell them, hey, when you order the guy for the evaluation, why don't you make sure you let him know, like, listen, we're doing this because we care about you and we're concerned about you, to try to anticipate that negative perception or that concern, like, oh, I'm being sent for a fitness for duty evaluation, right? To understand that it's kind of it's more normal than you think. It happens pretty regularly. And it usually means that, hey, maybe your work-life kilter has gotten a little out of balance and we need to do something to fix it. Because usually that's what it is, right? Usually it's you're working too much. You have, typically you have problems in one of 3 areas, right? You have problems in substance use, fucking people you're not authorized to fuck, or financial problems, right? Those are
all 3. Sometimes we got the trifecta.
And you get the trifecta. But those are the most common things that often lie that, that an officer's life is circling the bowl a bit, and let's pull him or her the fuck out.
Let's plug the bowl.
Yeah, or plug the bowl, whatever it takes. Because at the end of the day, I want you to understand, if you're out there listening, police psychologists became started working with law enforcement because we support you too. Like, I don't want them to think that we are your adversary. That is like I said, that would be the worst possible thing, to think that we're the enemy, because that is just not the case. We support you, and we're here to make sure that you're safe, and that if you're not well, I'm going to tell you what you need to do to get well, which might often be, hey, go see Stephanie. She might yell at you a little bit, but you probably fucking need to hear that then. Maybe.
Quite
you
the
might
reputation.
yell at them, maybe.
Quite the reputation.
And I guess people should know, if they have questions about fitness for duty, I'm open to talking with them. I had a unique experience where I had an officer who was receiving treatment, wasn't happy with the treatment he was receiving, and was concerned that because he is sort of down the road of that treatment, that if he stopped it and started something else, it would be seen unfavorably. Well, it comes to be that person knows somebody that I know, because the world isn't that fucking big, and that person connects me with the person. And I said, look, you're going to see me in a couple of weeks, and I'm here to tell you that if you're not getting what you need from point A where you are, then let's get you to somewhere else. I don't want you to keep going to something that's not helping you. And
that is so important, is that, no matter how great somebody says a therapist is, it doesn't make a difference. If that's not the fit for you, damn it, find the fit. Because Joe shit, the ragman, can't do this. But more importantly, you're going to be, with the general population, maybe you'll take your shirt off and your pants. But when you're in therapy and you're in good therapy, you're getting down and dirty. It's, and you've got to be comfortable to be seen naked, not physically naked. I just want to throw that out there. But to bare your soul, because that's where work gets done, in the soul.
And I tell officers also, the other thing I say when I say, how do you feel about seeing a therapist, is then I say to them, okay, if you're going to start a therapy relationship, you need to understand this. If you give a new therapist 3 visits, right? Because the research shows that the working alliance is pretty well formed by 3 visits, and the working alliance meaning the working relationship between the therapist and client. So if you're starting you're listening to us and you're starting a therapy relationship with someone, by the 3rd visit, if you don't feel comfortable with that person, don't make a 4th appointment, because the research shows it's probably not going to help you. I don't care if everybody says that they're Sigmund fucking Freud, right? Like, it's all about fit. When you go to a surgeon, you don't care if the surgeon's an asshole. You want the one who's most technically proficient. Therapy is a different ball game. Most therapists are technically proficient enough. It's about the fit. So
I can't thank you enough. I mean, having you on is just phenomenal. I look forward to having you back on. And
Happy to do
today
it.
today was a little dicey without Nick here. I'll tell you, my right hand and my left hand are Robbie Curtis, who has been our media relations coordinator. We give him all these important positions actually for Copline, and has truly been my right and left hand since December 6th when I met him. I mean, just phenomenal.
Right?
Only, and his sister somehow or another got roped into this. So Randy's also been part of making this happen today. And next week we're going to talk about leaders. We've got two people coming on the show. We've got retired Chief Norma Hardy from the Port Authority Police Department, and we've got active Chief John McCabe from the Monmouth County
Prosecutor. Nice.
Prosecutor's Office. So looking forward to being able to talk about leadership, particularly during probably the most stressful time our officers have seen in their entire careers. So there certainly are better ways of doing leading departments, and so we're again hoping to just get something positive. So thank you for always being part of the solution and not the problem.
Same with you, hon. Thanks for the work that you do with our officers to keep these people healthy.
Truly my honor. Truly my honor. All right. Take care. All right, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Straight Talk. Stop the Stigma with Steph and Nick, 7 p.m. on Facebook Live, Eastern Standard Time. All right. Bye-bye.